Welcome back to Creepshow, where we delve into the darkest corners of human history. Today, we uncover the sinister tales of physicians who, instead of healing, chose a path of death and destruction. These doctors turned their knowledge of medicine into a tool for horrific crimes. Join us as we explore the top 10 serial killer physicians who used their medical expertise for murder. Let's get into it. Number 10. Christopher Duntsch, Coke-Snorting, sociopathic spine surgeon. When a surgeon fails to perform 33 out of 38 surgeries, what do you call them? This is Dr. Death. He finished his residency with fewer than 100 surgeries, which is a tenth of what is customary, and he spent a chunk of his training in a program for impaired physicians because of his penchant for cocaine. Christopher Duntsch, an American neurosurgeon, was a doctor who was barely a doctor. After being employed by Baylor Regional Medical Center in Plano, Texas, Duntsch started causing harm almost immediately after leaving his position. As a result of his inexperience and negligence, his very first surgical patient was left partially paralyzed, and successive patients were similarly injured or mutilated when he performed surgery on them. Over the course of 2 years, Duntsch was accused of harming 43 out of 48 surgical patients. However, Dr. Death did not merely cause injury. He also caused death. Jerry Summers, a longtime acquaintance of Duntsch's, underwent a vertebrae fusion in 2011, but the procedure was mishandled so horribly that the patient lost the ability to use his limbs. A quadriplegic until the year 2021, when he passed away due to an infection that was caused by complications from the operation, Summers remained a quadriplegic. When Kelly Martin was experiencing back discomfort in 2012, she went to Duntsch for a surgery that was supposed to be a minimally invasive operation that would take 45 minutes. During the course of what turned out to be a 3-hour operation, Martin experienced a significant loss of blood and began to experience cardiac arrest. After then, she passed away in the intensive care unit due to bleeding. During the operation on Martin, Anson Fulton, a surgery technician, collaborated with Duntsch for the very first time. When he walked in the room, "I don't know if you've ever been in the presence of a sociopath, but it's a very ominous feeling," Fulton said. "It's a feeling not to be taken lightly. The aura that he gave me was not at all to my liking. The atmosphere was really gloomy, and it was not a pleasant sensation at all." At a hospital in Dallas, Duntsch was responsible for the death of Floella Brown by severing her vertebral artery and causing a major stroke, which ultimately resulted in the death of her brain. A couple of days later, she was taken off of life support. Mary Eford, who was 74 years old at the time, was rendered paralyzed as a result of an elective procedure that he conducted on her around the same time. A trail of injured victims was left behind by Duntsch at an additional number of hospitals. A fellow surgeon who had been charged with mending Duntsch's harm filed a complaint with the Texas Medical Board in 2013, which resulted in the revocation of Dr. Death's license. There have been civil lawsuits filed. And in 2015, Duntsch was taken into custody on criminal accusations that demonstrated intent. These allegations included 6 felony counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, 5 counts of aggravated assault inflicting serious bodily damage, and 1 offense of injury to an old person. Eford. Duntsch was found guilty of willfully maiming Eford in 2017, and he was ordered to serve a life sentence in prison for his crime. Number 9. Linda Hazzard, Enema-Wielding Homeopath. Long before Gwyneth Paltrow made fasting a fashionable practice, Dodger, Linda Hazzard was certified to practice as a fasting specialist. Hazzard did not have a medical degree, but she was able to practice medicine in the state of Washington because of a legal loophole. Hazzard was the author of the book Fasting for the Cure of Disease, which promoted the idea that ailments and illnesses that were caused by food could be treated by adopting a lifestyle that involved consuming limited amounts of food. Enemas were administered on a regular basis to patients at the sanitarium that she established in 1902 and termed Hazzard's Institute of Natural Therapeutics. Patients were simply given a few spoonfuls of soup or juice to drink. While many patients were satisfied with the treatment they received, it is estimated that 40 patients passed away while they were under Hazzard's care. One of Hazzard's detractors stated that if someone died while fasting, it was because they were in possession of something that was going to kill them in the near future. Hazzard was found guilty of manslaughter in 1912 for the death of a wealthy woman who weighed less than 50 pounds, 22.7 kilograms. The victim's body weight was less than 50 pounds. The evidence presented by the prosecution demonstrated that Hazzard had stolen the woman's valuables and faked her will while she was starved to death. Despite the fact that she was given a sentence of 20 years, she only spent 2 years since the governor granted her a pardon. In 1920, she established a second sanitarium, where she continued her practice of fasting until the building was destroyed by fire in 1935. In 1938, when Hazzard became ill, she committed suicide by starving herself to death. Number 8. Kermit Gosnell, baby-killing abortion provider. According to the report that was submitted by the grand jury in reference to Kermit Gosnell, this case is about a doctor who killed babies and endangered women. What we mean is that he routinely and unlawfully delivered live, viable babies during the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and then proceeded to murder these newborns by severing their spinal cords with scissors. Gosnell referred to this practice as ensuring fetal demise. Since the 1970s, Gosnell has been carrying out these late-term abortions, which were against the law. After that, in 2011, a drug raid that was conducted at his clinic in Philadelphia found the skeletal remains of fetuses and infants. A garbage disposal was among the places where body parts of infants were discovered, along with cabinets and freezers. Gosnell's lucrative operation was described as a filthy deception in the report of the grand jury. According to the report, Gosnell overdosed his patients with deadly medications, transmitted venereal disease among them using infected equipment, ruptured their wombs and bowels, and on at least 2 occasions caused their deaths. Among these fatalities was the death of Karnamaya Mangar, who was 41 years old and had gone to Gosnell for an abortion. However, she passed away as a result of an overdose of the Demerol that he provided. Her fetus, which was 19 weeks along at the time, was found in a freezer at the clinic, and it was found to be in perfect condition. In 2013, Gosnell was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder of newborns, hundreds of lesser abortion violations, and 1 act of involuntary manslaughter for Mangar's death. All of these charges were brought against him. Number 7. Harold Shipman, heartless lethal injector. While Harold Fred Shipman was still a teenager, he witnessed his mother be diagnosed with lung cancer. The effect that morphine had on this extremely ill woman, which brought her relief even as she passed away, captivated Shipman beyond all comprehension. This was the beginning of the future physician's preoccupation with opiates. Shipman was found faking prescriptions of Demerol for himself in 1974, just 1 year after he had begun his career as a physician. Following the payment of a nominal fine and the completion of a brief period of rehabilitation, he went back to practicing medicine and, over the course of the subsequent 20 years, became a well-respected member of his community. 1998 was the year that the coroner was made aware of the high death rate that was occurring among Shipman's patients. Even a taxi driver in the area gave notice to the authorities that women who appeared to be in good health passed away after he took them to Shipman. On the other hand, there was not enough evidence to warrant any charges against him. Shipman's final victim was a woman named Kathleen Grundy. As a result of Grundy's will, which excluded the family but left the doctor with 386 pounds, suspicions began to grow. Soon after, suspicion led to an investigation, which resulted in the exhumation of Grundy's body and the discovery of heroin. Her medical documents had been fabricated, and Shipman's typewriter had been used to draft her will during the process. Shipman's pattern was exposed through additional exhumations and investigations, which included the administration of lethal dosages of heroin, the signing of death certificates, and the falsification of medical records to exhibit an other cause of death. In the year 2000, Shipman was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of 15 women who had been killed by deadly heroin injections between the years 1995 and 1998. In this manner, Shipman was responsible for the deaths of more than 218 patients during the duration of his practice, making him the most prolific serial killer in the history of Britain. In 2004, he committed suicide by hanging himself in his cell. Number 6. William Husel, fentanyl-administering intensive care doctor. William Husel, a physician from Columbus, Ohio, was suspected of killing scores of patients with pain medication to commit a series of homicides that did not include any physical violence. During the month of November 2018, the Mount Carmel Health System made the decision to remove Husel from patient care after it was determined that the activities of the physician had an impact on at least 34 patients, all of whom had passed away. According to reports, Husel was responsible for 28 of the deaths that occurred between February 2015 and November 2018, during which time excessive and potentially lethal quantities of medication were administered. The prosecutor's office was contacted by a hospital attorney who told them that Husel was administering doses of fentanyl at a level that they internally believed were inappropriate and not for a legitimate medical purpose. The investigation revealed that the doses of the pain relief opioid were designed to hasten the death of the patients that were being treated. A total of 14 counts of murder were brought against Husel in court. The remaining instances, which included lower amounts of fentanyl, were dropped, much to the dismay of the families of the people who had passed away. It was said by one individual that the physician was meant to provide his loved one with something that would make him feel more at ease. You did not hear someone say, "I am going to administer 1,000 micrograms of fentanyl to him, and he will be dead before you enter the room." While Husel's trial resulted in an acquittal, he launched a defamation action against Mount Carmel. In the lawsuit, he stated that he has suffered perhaps the most egregious case of defamation in Ohio's recent history, and asserted that all of the fatalities were caused by natural causes. Number 5. H. Holmes, cadaver collector and thief. With the completion of his high school education, Herman Webster Mudgett decided to alter his name to Henry Howard Holmes, also known as H. Holmes. Holmes, who was preoccupied with death and money, stole cadavers when he was attending the University of Michigan Medical School. He then staged the bodies to make it appear as though they had been killed in an accident, and he collected insurance money on bogus policies that he had taken out on the deceased. After graduating from medical school, Holmes began his career working at a drugstore in Chicago. In the end, the physician purchased the company, and shortly thereafter, the widow of the former proprietor vanished without a trace. He then proceeded to construct a hotel just across the street. When it first opened its doors in 1891, the castle was advertising itself as a location where young ladies might find employment and a place to stay. In the meantime, Holmes appeared in advertisements portraying himself as a wealthy man who was looking for a wife. It was mandatory for Holmes to obtain life insurance for all of his staff, hotel visitors, fiancés, and partners. If they designated him as the beneficiary, he was responsible for paying the premiums. Surprisingly, the majority of the insured would vanish without a trace. Neighbors reported seeing a large number of women enter the castle but never leave. During the World's Fair that was held in Chicago in 1893, Holmes took advantage of the fact that a large number of women would require housing arrangements. There were over 100 rooms in his castle, and a good number of them were soundproofed. In addition, the structure featured chutes leading down to the basement, trap doors, peepholes, and stairways that led to dead ends. The crematory, a stretching rack, and a dissecting table were all located in the basement respectively. It was planned that some of the bodies that Holmes would send down the chutes would have their flesh removed and then be sold to some medical colleges. Some of them would be burned in a furnace or dissolved in acids. In order to suffocate his guests, Holmes installed gas lines in the rooms where they were staying. Immediately following the conclusion of the fair, Holmes left the castle and shifted his attention to random killings and insurance scams, not for murder or insurance fraud, but for making a fortune by stealing and reselling horses. He was arrested and held in jail for a short period of time. Before being arrested once more, Holmes continued to make fraudulent claims against insurance companies. The police conducted a raid on the castle this time, during which they found a large number of dead and half bodies. It was subsequently determined that he was responsible for the deaths of the children of a friend, and he confessed to committing an additional 28 killings. On the other hand, investigators thought that Holmes was responsible for as many as 200 individuals being murdered. As one of the first serial killers in the United States, he was executed by hanging in the year 1896. Number 4. John Bodkin Adams, Angel of Death or Angel of Mercy. There was a man named John Bodkin Adams who came before Harold Shipman. There were around 160 patients of the British physician who passed away as a result of mysterious deaths between the years 1946 and 1956. In addition, 132 of these patients included Adams in their wills before they passed away themselves. The trial of Adams for the murder of one of the patients took place in the year 1957. The doctor was accused of targeting elderly female patients, changing their wills, cutting them off from their families, and killing them with lethal injections of morphine and heroin. Murder trial of the century, inquiry into 40 wills, and massive dosage of drugs to wealthy widows were some of the headlines that appeared in the newspapers. In the end, he was absolved of any responsibility for the murder. Adams continued to be vilified by the press even after the verdict was announced. Due to the fact that the physician had already killed a large number of people and was sure to kill even more, they advised that the police should rush to bring charges, despite the fact that their case was not yet ready. Some people believed that Adams was carrying out mercy kills by delivering painkillers to lessen the suffering of terminally sick patients, despite the fact that many people considered Adams to be a mass murderer. By easing the suffering of terminally ill people, he assured the police that it was not a criminal act. Whether it was for financial gain or for compassion, Adams was the wealthiest physician in the United Kingdom. He resided in a spacious house and drove the Rolls-Royce that belonged to one of his patients who had passed away. In a subsequent trial, however, he was found guilty of 13 counts, including impeding a police search, lying on cremation forms, and failing to keep a register of dangerous drugs. He was also found guilty of committing prescription fraud. However, in 1961, Bodkin was able to get his medical license back after it had been taken away from him. His death occurred in 1983 due to natural causes, yet he continued to practice medicine until that year. Number 3. Leonardo Cazzaniga, Italy's diabolical lover doctor. An emergency department physician and his nursing girlfriend were both found guilty and sentenced to prison. In April of 2021, a court in Milan affirmed their sentences. In addition to being found guilty of 3 further murders, Leonardo Cazzaniga, who is 65 years old, was found guilty of killing 10 people and sentenced to life in prison. Laura Tironi, his mistress, was found guilty of murdering 2 members of her family and received a sentence of 30 years in prison. The Italian press has collectively referred to the couple as the diabolical lovers, and they have been detained since the year 2016. It was determined that Cazzaniga was responsible for the voluntary death of 8 patients who were being treated at the Saronno hospital. The prosecution claimed that the physician killed his patients in a delirium of omnipotence by giving them excessive amounts of anesthetic and sedative medications after they had been administered to them. Between the years 2011 and 2014, the police have conducted investigations into 40 deaths that coincided with Cazzaniga's work shift. Defense attorneys maintain that the methods were consistent with customary palliative care due to the fact that one of the patients was Cazzaniga's own father. On the other hand, the prosecution brought up the fact that one of the victims had passed away immediately after being admitted to the hospital with nothing more than a dislocated shoulder. In addition, the physician was found guilty of murdering the father-in-law of his nurse lover and of conspiring with her to kill her husband before committing the murder. The jury decided that Tironi, who was 44 years old and a mother of 2, was responsible for the deaths of both her husband and her own mother. Every once in a while, I have the urge to finish off someone. A police wiretap revealed that she stated, "I need it." Tironi was successful in persuading her husband that he had diabetes, and she then supplied insulin at dosages that were fatal to him. It is likely that the pair would make additional appeals. Number 2. Shiro Ishii, germ warfare enthusiast. Both the United States of America and Great Britain conducted experiments on animals in order to test biological weapons during World War II. On the other hand, Shiro Ishii, a Japanese medical officer, did not adhere to ethical standards. In order to examine some of nature's most dangerous viruses, he employed human subjects. In 1920, Ishii received his medical degree, and 7 years later, in 1921, he was commissioned as a military surgeon in the Imperial Japanese Army Service. During the time that the Geneva Protocol of 1925 prohibited the use of biological and chemical weapons in warfare, Ishii strongly encouraged the Japanese military to develop these weapons. As part of his studies into the developments in biological and chemical warfare that occurred after World War I, he went throughout the United States and Europe. In 1936, Ishii was elevated to the position of official commander of Unit 731 in China. In order to conduct research that would be of use to Japanese soldiers, the unit was established with the purpose of gaining an understanding of how the human body can tolerate hunger and thirst, as well as combat sickness. In the beginning, studies were carried out on willing participants, but Ishii's supervision resulted in major changes to the procedures. According to him, the God-given mission of a physician is to prevent and treat sickness, but the work that he did was the complete opposite of these principles. Within this research center, Ishii and his colleagues conducted experiments on human subjects who were still alive. Chinese prisoners of war and Allied prisoners of war were used as guinea pigs. They were made to breathe, eat, and get injections of various lethal infections, including anthrax, gas gangrene, smallpox, typhoid, cholera, plague, botulism, and dysentery bacteria, among others. The researchers performed vivisections without administering any form of anesthesia, as well as inducing frostbite and pregnancy. More than 10,000 people are thought to have perished as a result of these tests. In the aftermath of the war's conclusion, Ishii pretended to be dead and then went into hiding. He was discovered by American forces, and in exchange for protection from prosecution for war crimes, he offered to share the results of his program. Although they accepted the offer, the Americans discovered that Ishii's documents included very little of significance. It was not disclosed that biological weapons were used in the Japanese war crimes trials, and Ishii passed away as a free man in the year 1959. Number 1. Josef Mengele, twins-obsessed Nazi physician. Josef Mengele, who held doctoral degrees in both physical anthropology and genetic medicine, worked as a respectable research assistant at the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene, where he studied twins before to his career as a Nazi physician. On the other hand, Mengele was totally committed to the nationalist, racist, and anti-Semitic beliefs held by the Nazi Party, and he intended to use his abilities and training to make use of those beliefs. In 1937, Heinrich Himmler became a member of the Nazi Party, and in 1938, he received his medical degree. In 1940, he was drafted into the war, and when he was there, he volunteered for the medical services of the armed SS. By the end of 1943, SS Captain Mengele had become the main camp physician at Auschwitz II, Birkenau. This individual, along with approximately 30 other medical professionals, made selection rounds on the ramp on a regular basis in order to identify which new convicts would be allowed to continue working and which would be instantly executed in the gas chambers. In this capacity, Mengele displayed a ruthless temperament that earned him the nickname Angel of Death. Mengele even made an appearance in the selection area when he was off duty, always looking for twins and individuals with outstanding physical traits, dwarfism, heterochromia, to employ for medical study. He had complete freedom to do research in whatever manner he chose, including carrying out agonizing and frequently fatal experiments with Jewish and Roma, Gypsy, twins, the majority of whom were children. About 3,000 identical twins, the majority of whom were children, Mengele's children, were rescued from the ramp. Blood draws and bulk transfusions were performed on a daily basis for them. For the purpose of creating the appearance of blue eyes, Mengele injected toxic substances into their eyes. For the purpose of conducting side-by-side post-mortem exams, he would inject one of the twins with illnesses and then murder the other twin. Amputation, spinal taps, castration, organ removal, and other procedures were carried out by Mengele without the use of anesthesia. It is estimated that just roughly 200 of these twins live. The war crimes committed by Mengele were never brought to justice. Over the course of the subsequent 34 years, he escaped capture and disappeared. During the year 1985, German law enforcement officials discovered his burial in South America and exhumed his body. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through the lives of serial killer physicians. These doctors, who were meant to heal, chose a path of unspeakable evil. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more unsettling stories. This is Creepshow, signing off.